Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I have a story time for you all. And also, quick side note, I'm feeling like a little bit of a jack-o'-lantern today with my orangey black ensemble. I would say this is almost an orange. It's kind of like an ashy orange. Anyways, hello. Today I'm going to be telling you all of the stories that I've heard since moving to the country in Oregon that are notably absurd. And I will warn you, some of these are grotesque and talk about spooky things. And so that's your little disclaimer there. But if you like spooky things, then stay here for the video. I guess I should start off with actually kind of like a more tame story because the rest of these are gonna get increasingly more absurd. So I'll start off slow with just like kind of spooky that this happened, but also really cute and nice. So my first friendly story is basically I have two neighbors over here, Olya and John, and they're great. They're just the nicest people ever, and I'm really appreciative for all of my neighbors around me. And Olya and I, we text a lot. We keep in touch. And she sent me a video. This was sometime over the summer, and they were hiking behind our house on these trails back here. And there's cougars back there. There's been a lot of sightings. Some people have seen like deer dragged across the street and like a trail of where it was dragged and been like, oh my God, the cougars are on our street, dude. And that was like just up the ways from us. So I know that I should be very careful when I hike the trails behind our house for those reasons. But basically, I wish Olya was here to tell this story herself, but instead I'm just gonna tell it for her. And I'll try to get the clip from her because she sent me a video of this whole excursion. But her and John saved a baby deer, like a little fawn, from a fucking cougar. Isn't that just wild? And when I say that, you know, you're like, oh, they could be making that up. No, no, no. I have the video evidence to show you, okay? They're basically just hiking back there. And I don't know if like they saw the cougar have the fawn in its jaws or something. If any of these details are off or wrong, I will correct myself on the screen. But she sent me a video of them like trying to get the fawn to stand and being like, you're okay, you're fine, it's all good. We're gonna help you find your mom and all of that. And they were like talking to it. And then John like walked the little deer up the trail, and all of the people in their group that they were with, they were like looking up on the mountainside to see where the mom was. And when they found her, they like saw her come down the mountain and they like reunited the mom and the baby deer. And then they were on their way. But like they literally saved that baby deer's life from being eaten by a fucking cougar. That is insane to me.
You guys, let's give her some room. Just so she feels safe.
So yeah, they got attacked like right here.
Oh, baby and mom are reunited.
You see right here? Yeah.
There they are, they're together. Oh, I'm gonna cry. That was like, honey, I love you so much. You have the most beautiful heart.
Oh dear.
I love you.
So that's my most tame story out of all of these because it ended in like a really happy ending and kind of good. But the rest of these are, whew, off the rails. Why don't I tell the other story about my neighbor now that we're here? Not those neighbors, but my neighbors who have a cow pasture across the street. Sometime over the summer, Larry basically just like climbed underneath their fence. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, then you might have seen the aftermath of this on my Instagram story. But he was just doing sprints around the cow pasture, rolling in cow patties, which is cow poop, for those of you who don't know what a freaking cow patty is. I wouldn't expect you to. But yeah, he was just rolling in the patties, man, just getting all caked up with poop on his neck and on his back, just being insane, truly. He was like having a day for himself. So he was doing his stress relief sprints with the cows. And then actually my neighbor Olya texted me and was like, Larry's in the cow pasture if you like want to go and get him. And she sent me a photo of him in there and I was like, oh no. And so I walk over there and Larry is just like having a field day. We end up having to like hop the fence and bring him out of there and hose him down with the cold hose water out in our yard. And ever since then, he has never gone back to that cow pasture. But he has walked down the street and walked onto their property, like their actual house and like their driveway and stuff. And he walked down there one day, and we had never met the man over there. I forget his name, let's just call him Joe. So Joe and his two hounds, like cattle hounds, were waiting at the edge of their driveway, and they were just kind of waiting for us to go and get Larry and stuff. And Larry, he's figured out now after months of living here, this was like more so over the summer, that he has to have some kind of etiquette with our neighbors. Like he can't just run up on their property. And when we went to pick him up, we were just talking to that guy Joe, and we mentioned to him that Larry had gotten into the cow pasture one day and was rolling in the cow poop. And his demeanor, like from friendly, just completely changed to just like, oh, he was rolling in the cow poop? Was he chasing the cows? And I was like, oh no, the cows were just like standing there, you know, just kind of like, what the heck is this dog doing in our field? And he was like, okay, because if he was chasing them, I'm gonna have to shoot him. And Finley and I were both like, what? What did you just say? And he was like, yeah, that guy who used to live in your house down there, oh, a couple years ago, he had like 3 separate dogs, and I shot him. I shot one of his dogs one time. And we were like, what? Like, was he okay? And he was like, yeah, I shot him in the leg so he wouldn't run and chase the cows anymore. I don't know why I'm doing a country accent. Nobody around here has real thick country accents like where I'm from in Georgia. But for the sake of these stories, these crazy country stories, some of these people will have accents because it just feels fitting, you know? But yeah, he basically just explained to us, like, he'll either get kicked or stomped on by a cow, or he will get shot by him. And we were like, okay, and just like picked up little Larry and we're like, see you later, Joe. And like, we have not talked to that man since then. I think Finley saw him at like the store or something, but shit, man. Yeah, after that I was like, we need to get an electric fence. Like, we need to figure out something because we don't own this property, we just rent it here, so we can't like fence in our whole area because it would just be expensive, and it's not our property to really do that. Like, if we owned it, maybe I would, but ever since then, Larry has not gone back over there, so thank God for that, because I'm not trying to get my dog shot. Who even would fathom doing that to such a cute freaking dog? I can't even, that's just a completely different thing. But I guess just people care about their cows, you know? It's like, what could my dog do to your cow that would harm him in any way? He's just a little guy. Anyways, now I have to talk about the dude who used to live here because I have heard some shit about him. And I feel like I've told this story either on my podcast or like in an early vlog of when we first moved here and stuff. But basically, when we moved in, my neighbors, Steve across the street over here, and then Olya came over. And Olya at the time, I don't think she knew who used to live here, but Steve did. We had heard from the landlady and our realtor and stuff that whoever was here last didn't have a great reputation. Like, they had a bad tenant here before. So we knew kind of vaguely what it was. But basically, Steve told us that he was pressing dabs, you know, like weed wax type stuff. He had the equipment to be pressing dabs and was doing it in the basement of this house. And he was just like never really fully moved in. Like, he the reason he even lived here was because he basically told our landlady that he would pay all of the rent for an entire year up front, and they didn't have any lease, and this was her first time like renting to a person because she used to live here and this is like her home. She just was like, oh, you'll give me all the money up front? Okay, Mr. 20-something-year-old with like a significant amount of money. That should have been honestly a red flag right there, that he would offer to pay all of the money up front, because like, who has that kind of money at our age? I don't know. Anyways, he was, you know, just pressing and selling dabs and doing that whole kind of thing, just doing his waxy guy thing. But yeah, he was never really fully moved in. According to Steve, they only had a mattress on the floor, a glass table, which is now on our patio. It's like an outdoor furniture table, you know? They had that in the middle of the living room, surrounded by like a bunch of shitty chairs. And that was like all they had. They never got furniture or like tried to decorate the place. It was just a place for them to be doing their weedy thing, which is like, okay. And Steve was like, he was always on psychedelics, like he was always on something. He was always just kind of lost in the head, you know, hard to talk to. And he was just a crazy motherfucker. But one time Steve told us that he came over here for, I don't know why, but he knocked on the door and the guy, let's call him JJ. JJ answers the door and he was like, hey man, come on in. And it was raining in the living room. Like a pipe had burst or something. It was just free raining in the living room. And JJ acted like there was fucking nothing going on. He just sat down and was like, what's up, Steve? What's going on? Like, what do you want? You know? And then Steve was like, do you want to fix that? Like, I can help you. And he was like, it's fine. All good. But yeah, that man was crazy. That's not even the craziest thing that he did. He also ripped off the door of our wood stove and apparently was going to make an iron casting of himself, like his head or something. Who even knows? I don't even know the full story behind that, but that's what Steve told us. And like, that's part of the reason why he ripped off the door, apparently. And he ripped it off its hinges. So like, we have to get a whole ass new wood stove. That's just a whole different thing. I think I told that story in a recent I love this stuff or something. But also when things were getting out of hand and our landlady needed to kick him out, she had to take him to court to get him the heck out of here because they didn't have a lease. They didn't have anything in writing because he had paid up front. So she had to get all of like the neighbors who knew him to come and testify against him in court to be like, he's crazy and he cannot be in this space, okay? So apparently, out of spite, this motherfucker laid a bunch of like quick concrete in the basement and then broke glass bottles into it, just shattering them. And when he moved out, they had to like jackhammer that shit out of the basement. And now there's just a pile, like 3 giant piles of rock at the end of our driveway that has like broken glass in it. And there was just all that shit kind of scattered by the driveway. Like, what a loon, you know? Like, how could you do that to somebody else's home? So yeah, those are like some loony kind of tame stories for you, but also a little bit psychotic. And now we're gonna get into a lot more psychotic, okay? Honestly, I don't wanna finish with this one because it's just disturbing. So I'm just gonna tell it now. In our sister town of Estacada, I don't know how recent this was. I want to say it was like a couple years ago, but on Mother's Day, a guy in our town killed his mother, beheaded her, drove with the head to Estacada Harvest Market, which is like a little grocery store, runs into the store with his mom's head in his hands and stabs a worker there, like just a cashier or something, stabs somebody there, and then everybody just like tackled him to the floor and waited for the police to show up. And I'm like, what in God's name? Like, you behead your mother on Mother's Day and then drive with her fucking head like he was just off the rails insane. That shit around here is like unheard of, okay? And you can look up this story. You can search Harvest Market Estacada beheading and it will come up with the fucking news story. I did not know that that happened in that town until I moved here and heard the story. And I was like, holy shit, that happened like here. Like, he lived in our town, drove to their town and just did a bunch of crazy shit. But yeah, basically the workers there and a couple of just regular patrons tackled him to the ground while they waited for the police to show up. And the guy who got stabbed is fine. Like, he recovered and stuff. Bless his heart. Honestly, that is just so, I cannot believe that that shit happened. Like, where does your head have to be able to do that? So yeah, he's been locked up for a while. Let's just say that. Every time I think about that story, I'm like, that is the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my entire goddamn life. Now I have all of these stories that I heard from the guy who sold me my truck. I found the truck on one of the back roads driving out from our town to go to Portland, and he lives like a couple minutes down the street from me. And so he knows just a bunch of shit that has happened reasonably in this area. And when I was getting like a pre-buy inspection on the truck, he took Finley and I out for a beer because there was a tap room like right next to the auto shop. So we were just sitting there and he was telling us all these absurd stories about the area. So in the words of Dustin, around his house, well, he told us the story about the beheading first off, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, what? And then he goes, you think that's crazy? I mean, people, when they're like isolated out here or don't have many people around, like they can go getting loony, man. And so then he told us a story about somebody on his street who was always like a little bit crazy. But apparently one day he locked himself in his own home, set the house on fire. We're gonna call him Bob, okay? So when the neighbors ran over and were like, Bob, what are you doing, man? Do you need help? Do you want us to call the fire department? He was like, leave me alone. I just want to burn, you know? So he was just killing himself basically in his own home. And then the neighbors realized that the fire was slowly inching towards his propane tank, because a lot of people around here have propane powered heat, and the propane tanks are always on the outside of the house. And yeah, the fire was inching over there and they saw it. So they quickly were like, all right, like he doesn't want help and that shit is about to explode. So they ran away. The house exploded. Just fucking exploded from the propane tank. The guy died. I can't believe that that happened. Like, I don't even know what I would do if somebody set their house on fire and I went over to help and they were like, don't help me, let me burn. I would be like, okay. And then he told us a story because I brought up, for some reason, like there's a watch page in our community because we don't have a distinct police force in our town. Like the closest one is like 20 minutes away. So people have like this Facebook page where they post, you know, stuff that has been happening so everybody can be on the lookout if like stuff is getting stolen or there's a car in the area that's doing some suspicious activity and just stuff like that. So I brought up that page and he was like, oh yeah, like there was a post on there about these two junkies who had like drifted into town and were just going onto people's property and like rummaging through their barns and like taking stuff. And apparently on somebody's property, they had taken some stuff and the guy who owned the house had caught them, shot them, and then buried them underneath his trash. And he didn't tell anyone. He was just like, they were on my property, I killed them, there you go, you know? And when he told me that, I was like, okay, but like if somebody's coming onto your property and stealing from you, are you allowed to shoot them? And he was like, you can shoot them, but you can't kill them and bury them underneath your fucking trash, dude. Like that will get you locked up. So that guy is now in prison. And I kind of just assumed like those two junkies, like they didn't really have anybody in their life. Like maybe they were like a couple or something and they were just kind of taking on the town and like being drifters, and they didn't really have anybody who was like out looking for them. But apparently one of them had a friend who was like, where is Betsy? And so then she was searching for Betsy and alerted the police that Betsy was missing, and then they traced her back to the guy's trash. And now he is all locked up and he shot and killed two people. I just can't even believe that shit. All these stories, I'm like, I don't want to believe it, okay? But I bet it's fucking true. Who knew that in the country these types of things happen? I thought everybody just minded their own business and tended to their gardens, you know? There's some crazies out there, folks. Okay, I have one last story to tell because I think that this is just all of the crazy stuff that I've heard since moving here. And this one is just kind of funny because it involves Dustin, the guy who sold me the car. So he has like a blue heeler. And so the dog would run off of his property and like go over to his neighbor's house, and his neighbor had chickens and he would go chasing the chickens. And then one time he killed a chicken and the neighbor came over and was like, stop letting your fucking dog come over and kill my chickens, Dustin. Okay, I won't be having it. And Dustin was like, he just has a mind of his own. I'm sorry, buddy. I don't know what to tell you. That's basically like, he was not really very apologetic. But the neighbor was very upset. So when it happened again, the neighbor drove over with a dead chicken in his hands and came onto Dustin's property, threw the chicken onto his driveway, and basically says something along the lines of, when do you shoot the neighbor or shoot the dog in this situation? And Dustin was apparently like packing a gun on his hip, you know, as people in the country do. And he goes, I don't know, and put his hand on his gun. The dog doesn't shoot back. Oh my God. And when he told us that story, I was like, what? Oh my God, what a loon. But yeah, basically the neighbor just drove off after that because they didn't want to have a shootout in the driveway. But yeah, I asked him, I said, did your dog ever stop killing his chickens? And he was like, yeah, he did. I was like, okay. Oh yeah, but that was just an interesting afternoon of drinks and crazy stories. And Dustin is just he's so funny. He's a really nice guy though, when it comes down to it. He's a very sweet man. He gave me a discount on the car. It was a good afternoon. He bought us a round of beers. I mean, it was just a time. It was a time to be alive. So yeah, I think that that's all of my crazy country stories to tell you guys today. But I do want you to know, I do feel safe here, okay? Despite all of these things happening, people pretty much mind their own business. It's just a wild, wild world out here. The wild, wild west. Okay, well, I did a poll on Twitter, and this is the video that you guys chose to see, and it won by 2% instead of a video on vaginal health. So my range of content is really insane now that I think about it. I'm like, you either wanted this or you want tips on vaginal health. But I will still be making that video. Not this weekend. I'll probably have a different upload this weekend, and then maybe next week I'll have the video on vaginal health. Who really knows, but I will be making it. Okay, I just gotta get my tips in order. My tips gotta get all straightened out. So in the meantime, I hope you have a nice life. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed these loony stories, got a kick out of some of them, give this video a big thumbs up for me. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already. Ring the notifications bell if you wanna be notified when I upload. And until that next upload, stay smiling. Bye guys.
Baby, have you got